Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, May the 23rd, 2025. Just double checking. Today, we're going to answer your cover crop queries, talk a bit about compost tea and why I don't really, well, we'll get there. But first, it's Feedback Friday. So let's do it. All right, well, happy Friday to you all. It is hoodie weather here in the great state of Kentucky, which is a nice change of pace from previous seasons. Yesterday, I got lettuce seeds started, some cultivation done, and I am trying my hand again at grafting the cucumbers, but I'm not really going to talk much more about that yet until I'm actually successful one of these days at grafting the cucumbers, assuming that I actually am successful one of these days. Also, maybe you can tell I caught a little bit of a cold, but I'm managing. Anyway, it's Friday, which means Feedback Friday, where we explore some of what you all were saying on this week's topics. On Monday, we talked about farming for the long haul, and I liked this from our Patreon member, Susan, who wrote, quote, "Been farming and heavy gardening since I was in high school, now more than 50 years. Yes, ouch. The value of having kept fit during the younger years cannot be overestimated. Yes, stretching/yoga, strength training, running, chiropractic, all of that. Through the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, etc. Nowadays, still doing some of the above. Plus, love me some Aleve. Keeps me rolling more or less. But Jesse, from the vantage of 68 years old, I must disagree about sitting. There are many chores that I would literally not be able to do anymore at all were I not able to sit to do them. I'm not sure I love the rolling garden seat that was pictured. It looks pretty bulky, but maybe one would love it. But I have an excellent garden sitting bench, sadly no longer made, that is constantly in use and maybe even more useful, a lightweight plastic seating block. So, don't knock sitting. You might need it one day," end quote. So there you go. Thanks, Susan. Someone with some experience who endorses sitting. So that may be an option for you, even if it doesn't feel like it's totally one for me. We also talked about cover cropping on that day, and I'm going to get some of the questions together on that for the end of this show. So stay tuned for that follow up and keep them coming. On Tuesday, we talked about if you could transplant corn, and I liked this from Devin Sullivan, 7233, who wrote, quote, "Corn should not be transplanted. It should be direct seeded every time. That's a very amateur move to transplant corn. You won't find a successful corn farmer anywhere that transplants corn, field corn or sweet corn. I can plant 200 row feet of corn in about 5 minutes. Think about how long it takes you to plant corn in trays and then how long it takes you to transplant corn plants, plus the extra cost. My rule of thumb is anything that has a big seed and is easy to direct seed, that's what should be done. Cucurbits and corn all do amazing, directly seeded. They don't like their roots disturbed, so they don't like to be transplanted. Corn shoots a taproot down about 6 inches long by the time it is 3 inches tall when it's directly seeded in the ground." End quote. So thank you. And indeed, I mentioned that it is not necessarily going to be the most efficient or most profitable way to do this in terms of labor, but in market gardens, space is a huge limiting factor. So if you're only growing, say, a couple beds of sweet corn and transplanting would get the crop earlier and also free the bed for 3 weeks or more and potentially increase the yield, then transplanting could, in fact, be the right call here. Like you could slip a radish crop in there before the corn and a whole other crop after that, making the bed significantly more profitable over the course of a season than if you were directly seeding it. Now, on a larger scale, but especially without mechanical transplanter, seeding makes the most sense, for sure, as Devin suggests, especially if land is not the issue. But if you only have 20 beds, then transplanting is going to save you the space. Also, lots of opinions on squirrels that day, and if they are actually the worst versus, say, moles or voles or gophers or whatever. But I liked this a lot from @Andrew Bermel, 1099, who asked, quote, "Squirrels or wind?" As in, I assume, which would you rather have to deal with? And I'd say squirrels, 100%. I'd get a couple dogs and chill. Wind, even when it's bad, is like having a bully just constantly poking you and throwing your tarps and harvest bins and row covers around, as bullies are wont to do. But this bully cannot be warded off with a dog. So no wind dogs out there on the market yet. On Wednesday, we talked about does vermicompost lead to damping off and also weeding gear. And I was delighted with how many people really love their hori knives, like Cheesy Belize, who wrote, quote, 17 years of growing. And since day one, I have used a knife for weeding / cultivating. It has a 6-inch, slightly curved serrated blade. It is hands down my most used tool. I carry it around in my tool belt all day, every day. It is immensely handy, end quote. And I can't say for sure, having not seen that specific knife, but that describes a hori or at least something close to it. The Hori Hori is a serrated blade trowel knife thing. We don't have one anymore, but it is a great tool, and we found it came in exceedingly handy when we were harvesting garlic in particular, so that we didn't leave any garlic bulbs behind. We could just kind of shove it into the soil and pop them out, and wouldn't just pop out when we were pulling them. And we could also just pick the weeds, with that knife as we went down the garlic row to prep it for the next crop. Then on Thursday, we discussed pelleted seed, and sticking with this commenter at Cheesy Belizy for a second, they wrote, quote, "I believe that seed life for pelleted seed is shorter because I think the clay coating is most likely applied with some moisture, and that bit of moisture would essentially, quote unquote, prime the seed. Makes sense to me as the very limited pelleted seed I do use. Lettuce has not seemed to germinate well in second years," end quote. So this is interesting, and although, like I said, I can't really find anything that suggests pelleted seeds do not last as long, really. For those who do not know how pelleted seeds are made, Cheesy is right here. The seeds are sprayed lightly with water and basically tossed in a bowl in an inert mixture until they reach the right amount of coating. So it's not impossible that the amount of moisture does prime the seed a bit. Seed priming is basically like you get it wet, you dry it out, and then that helps it to germinate a little faster. But although that would decrease their longevity, priming does, it would also likely increase their germination rates. So it's kind of hard to say. And I will say I've had pelleted lettuce seed for 2 years in a row. I worked way over Salanova one year, and it germinated at almost the exact same percentage the next year. So of course that is completely anecdotal and not to sound like every study ever, but perhaps more study is needed. Anyway, great stuff as always, friends. Best comment section on YouTube. We're going to take a quick break and then talk compost teas. BRB, or BURB for short. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Precip. Precip is billed as the easiest way to keep track of rainfall, and that is true, but it is a lot more than that. Sure, you can open the app and immediately see accurate rainfall totals, but you can also save locations to see historical rainfall totals, wind speeds, and all sorts of other nerdy details. Their radar-based technology means you can ditch the rain gauge. I usually have to do that anyway because the kids find a way to smash it with a baseball bat. You can ditch the rain gauge and start tracking rain and other growing conditions all on your phone. Click the link in the show notes to find out more. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member 7L Farm, who writes, quote, "I own a medicinal herb company focused mostly on fresh herb extractions. We're developing a new farm in, I'm going to get this wrong, Poulsbo, Washington? Zone 8B, where about half the land is for yield trials to support local farmers and half is for production of highly valuable, easy to grow herbs like lemon balm, easy, and go to cola, and they put several money signs after it. I'm assuming that means it's worth money. We're working towards a no-till, biologically intensive system. I just got set up to brew actively aerated compost tea, AACT, and have been gathering advice, but there's a lot of conflicting information, especially around applications, timings, and methods. Our situation. Compost. We make excellent compost from spent biomass of our herb extractions, inoculated with forest soil. Brewing. Using fish hydrolysate and humate, brewing 24 to 48 hours with aeration. Compliance. We are required to test finished extracts for total plate counts, so minimizing microbial risk on harvestable parts is crucial. End quote. And then they have a few questions that I will answer individually. The first one of their questions is, in the Living Soil Handbook, you mentioned avoiding foliar compost tea sprays on harvestable material. Is that still your practice? Good question. And the answer is yeah. In fact, I probably use fewer compost teas than I ever have right now, mostly out of time constraints, but also just for food safety. The one exception is perhaps young plants that I can see need a little something extra, like potatoes or tomatoes. But by and large, I would rather just make sure the soil is in a really good place to start so I don't have to be out there spraying compost teas. It's extra work that I don't really have the time for. Perennial trees, of course, are another exception, or in your case, perennial herbs. That might be an area where I would absolutely be having to treat those plants more often with teas and at least a nutrient spray from time to time. Anyway, next question they asked is, would you feel comfortable applying compost tea aerially to crops like lettuce at early stages? Example, 2 to 3 weeks before harvest. Personally, no, not really. I mean, I'm not uncomfortable with it necessarily. I feel comfortable inoculating the roots with a tea or extract before planting or priming the seeds with it. But for me, I just don't want to add anything to the leafy parts of the vegetables of crops that will be eaten raw like that. If you're using these for your home, do what you want, of course. Like, I'm not discouraging it necessarily, but my approach when selling food to people, extra caution is the bare minimum amount of caution. Also, lettuce doesn't really usually need it so much. It's a fast-growing, shallow-rooted crop, so as long as the soil is in a decent place in those top like 4 inches, you should be good to go. No real need to, I don't know, add that risk to the situation or that time. All right, their next question is, what dilution rates are you currently favoring for foliar soil applications? None, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. And I guess the answer is, well, it depends on the spray, I suppose. Mostly what I'm using are like root dips, like the JMS solution right now from Jadon Microorganism Solution, which I'm not really diluting at all, but I'm also not spraying it. I'm just dipping the roots of whatever I'm putting in the soil and soaking the soil with it. If I am spraying leaves with a compost tea or some other foliar, I am probably going closer to 1 part tea to 5 parts water. But also, if I purchase that foliar, I'm following the directions that are on the label. Yeah. All right. Next question is, how frequently are you applying compost teas? And well, the answer is that if I start a regimen with compost tea, I usually do it twice per month, depending on the crop. If I get a heavy rain, I may do a second dose that week or like the very next week. But usually I spread them, out a couple weeks. Next question is, are there best practices or improvements you'd recommend for optimizing the benefits and minimizing the risks? Well, for me, as you said, I don't spray fruit or edible parts of the plant in general. That to me is best practices. In general, I would like to get all the inoculation done before it goes to the field. So for me, I would prefer to soak the trays in the compost tea or extract or JMS solution and then transplant it for the, simple efficiency sake. It's also not only hard to know what you're adding to the plant without testing, which to me would be not very helpful by the time the test results got back. And although I think microscopy can help and is very fun and nerdy to do, I don't trust that I understand the microbiome of a plant enough to believe that I am adding the right microbes in the right amounts. A good compost in the soil and a good soil drench is enough for me. And I will say best practices, make sure that you're using the absolute best compost that you can and the best water. Just, don't take any risk with foodborne pathogens. And their last question is, any teas failures worth sharing? That's a fun part of this question. The only failure I can think of beyond just seeing no changes at all in several attempts, largely, I think, because the problem with those particular events was not, it wasn't the microbiome necessarily or the nutrient related. It was just compaction. Anyway, the one that really comes to mind is one time I whimsically added too much lactic acid bacteria, like the LAB from Korean Natural Farming, to a compost tea I was spraying, and the leaves of the broccoli I sprayed burnt. That was not my finest moment. Those sorts of amendments can be quite powerful, so not the worst idea to use one brain when applying them and dilute them well per the recommendations of a professional or of the people that develop those, teas. Anyway, I don't know if any of that was helpful or not. I don't have anything against teas. I've just learned that I'm mostly too busy for them anymore, and that taking care of the soil and applying teas to the young transplants or to the seeds, in the case of priming, is my preference just for efficiency's sake. And I feel like I get a really good result doing it that way. Love the questions. And as always, I'm not the be-all, end-all of opinions on foliar sprays or compost teas or any of that stuff. So don't feel like I'm telling you how to live your living soil life, but that is just kind of like what's worked for me and what I feel most comfortable with. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, your cover crop questions answered. Be right back. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Trax to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTIL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. Today's episode of Growers Daily is also brought to you by Ring of Fire. What if you could turn your brush problem into black gold? The Ring of Fire biochar kiln is your spring tool for soil transformation, converting woody debris into high-quality biochar in just hours. Biochar will kickstart your compost, retain water and nutrients in your soil, and provide habitat for beneficial microbes. Now $19.95 with flat rate shipping. Their spring sale runs through June. Don't wait to boost your soil and optimize your inputs. Visit ringoffire.earth/growers now to learn more. Also, for more information on biochar, check out the No Till Market Garden podcast interview with Kelpie Wilson, inventor of the Ring of Fire kiln, that we will link in the show notes. All right, back to the show. All right, so for my last act of the week, I thought I would tackle some of the cover crop questions that came up this week. If you have more, I will do more on Monday or Tuesday or, maybe Wednesday. Got to keep you on your toes. So Patreon member Ryan asked me, quote, I have a large garden and I'm learning to use cover crops. I have a cover crop of annual ryegrass that I would like to follow with various transplants. I'm finding that the ryegrass doesn't hit milk stage here in central Iowa until late May. I would like to have my transplant in a good couple weeks prior to this. Are there some good ways to adapt my plan? Also, what about flail mowing the rye during flowering, covering with compost, and then using my brush cutter to help wipe it out where the cover crop comes up between plants when crops are still relatively small? Sounds like work, but this is a fairly small scale. Maybe just a nightmare? Thanks, Ryan. End quote. Okay, so thank you, Ryan. To your first question about wanting to use cover crops but needing your transplants in the ground a couple weeks earlier, the only real option for that is winter kill cover crops. Maybe there is a faster winter wheat or something that could be ready earlier than, say, like cereal rye, but I doubt it would give you a full 2 weeks earlier. My advice instead would be the winter kill route. Now, covering the flail mowed rye at flowering stage with compost, you would likely indeed have some regrowth, but I suppose as long as you are cool with that and have a plan for it, it's fine. With the additional mulch and the mulch from the rye, it should push it back quite a bit. Perhaps instead, a layer of mulch paper first over the rye could be a better way to suppress it if you're concerned about the regrowth. So flail mow, then cover with paper, then compost, then wait at least a week or so, or preferably more, before sowing or planting anything. But that would keep that rye down. In a cooler climate, that rye may return more vigorously than it does here, where it's hot and rye is less happy to grow in the heat. So I would do what I could to fully kill it first. Next, Tessa L asked, quote, Hey Jesse, I'm just starting to delve into cover cropping in our market garden, and I've got a question for your cover crop theme this week. Do you or any of your listeners have recommendations for a cover crop that will reliably winter kill in Zone 9A? In my limited experience, oats and peas do not. I'm in southern coastal British Columbia, and we only get a handful of days colder than -5 degrees Celsius, which is like 23 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, I'm experiencing serious pea leaf weevil damage for the first time, and I happen to have planted a pea cover crop in some nearby beds for the first time last fall. I'm wondering if they might be related, and if you have any suggestions for how to use cover crops without proliferating pests and disease issues related to that crop family. I appreciate your work so very much. Thank you. End quote. Okay, so thank you. So in a warmer region that at least get a little cold like that, you could instead go with a summer cover crop like sorghum Sudan grass, sun hemp, those sorts of things, rather than a winter kill cover crop like peas and oats. Those two will not die without some consistent freezes, especially oats. At least peas are easier to kill in the spring. A millet, sorghum Sudan grass, and cowpea mix later in the summer could be a good alternative to that. So you get that as tall as you can, then maybe you smash it down, and then you let the freezes do their thing. Then about the pea weevil thing, that is always a challenge with cover crops that share a crop family with the crops you want to grow. You could be propagating pests or diseases. I obviously can't say for sure if that's what happened to you, but this is why cover crops, generally speaking, do not share a crop family with our main cash crops. Peas and other legumes are the exception because the nitrogen fixation is, I suppose, somewhat worth the risk. If that's the case for you, though, I would maybe avoid legumes for a while in the cover crop and supplement instead with alfalfa meal or other higher nitrogen organic fertilizers. And also remember that green things are nitrogen heavy. So like any sort of green material you work in or get on top of the soil surface will add some amount of nitrogen, maybe just not as much as a legume. All right, I hope those were helpful. And it was fun covering the cover crops this week. Anyway, keep your cover crop questions coming, and I will try to get to more of those next week or in the coming weeks as we start to kill them and then start thinking about summer cover crops. Otherwise, Friday, you are done, my friend. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Megan Ewing, Kyle Richardville, which I feel like, Kyle, I didn't say this when you signed up earlier, but that is a really novelistic name. Well done. Patrick Weaver, Alex and Oliver, Bill King, and Chris Yates. All right, so when the doctor finally makes it to Laurel, she's like out cold, but breathing, thankfully. The weird world the ranch hands entered is holding fast for the moment, but a fight has kind of broken out among the two groups. There's one faction of the ranch hands thinks they should clearly just wake Laurel up and get home. But there is a small group who kind of are thinking they want to keep it the way it is and potentially not wake Laurel up. They're just really in awe of this world. Like if nothing else has changed in the world, they ask, why would we not keep it this way if we can? The doctor, of course, Hippocratic oath and all those things and baseline ethics and all that, says he must try to wake up Laurel. That's he has to do that. But in so doing, they all know this beautiful version of their world could and probably will disappear. The doctor, of course, sensing some dangerous tensions, building, speaks up and says, listen, this world that you see was the product of simple, pragmatic hard work over multiple generations. Our parents and their parents simply recognized that no matter what you believe about the world, the health of the soil, the forest, the air, the water, that, not money, is what determines our mutual prosperity. In effect, if the soil is dead, so too are we. So, the doctor goes on, if you want this world, it's sitting right there, ready to be uncovered. You just have to work for it. And at that moment, Laurel's eyes shoot open, a chill fills the air, and they manage to move her into the truck just before the dust hits. The end. Or maybe the beginning. Anyway, have a great weekend. Thank you for watching and or listening. We will see you on Monday. Bye. For this scene, I want a bunch of coffee on my face. It really ties the whole thing together, makes it look more real.